Spore is divided into 5 main phases. It starts at cell phase. You're this microscopic thing living in a drop of water. Eventually you get larger, you move on to land, and you're now going through evolution as a large creature. Eventually you achieve intelligence, and you get to the 3rd phase, which is the tribal phase. Now you have primitive tools, you have social interactions with other tribes. Eventually you kind of get to the age of technology and you move into the civilization phase, at which point you're building cities. You can be economic, religious, military. Last stage is space, where you move out into space. You now start exploring other worlds. You start, terraforming them, trying to develop food webs, colonies, meeting other alien species and interacting with them, forming alliances, having wars, trading, whatever. When you're in the space phase, you're actually sent on a very epic quest toward the center of the galaxy, and different species that you meet give different interpretations of what's there. And once you get there, it's kind of up to you to figure out what you think it is. You can entirely get through every phase of Spore being total pacifist. You can be a vegetarian. There's, in most phases, there's roughly kind of a social path and a more aggressive path. In civilization, we call it military or religious. Back in creature, you can be basically a social creature or a predator. So we found that players enjoy both paths, enjoy mixing them as well. As you get to the later levels, you're actually getting special powers unlocked based upon how you played the previous levels. And so every time you play the game, you're going to probably end up with a fairly different combination of traits, therefore different superpowers unlocked, which then open up kind of different areas of gameplay. And so this is all about replayability and making the players enjoy exploring, taking different paths on subsequent plays. We keep a visual history in Spore as you play the game. Through everything you've done in the game, every evolution of your creature, everything that you built, everything you've designed, and in some sense it's presented as your history. This is the history of your world. And you can go back and look at it and see how things that you decided way back in early parts of your evolution are still having impacts, much later in your civilization. So really it's almost like your cultural personality that you're setting as you play through every level of the game. Later on, when I get into tribe level, depending on what superpowers I had earned from creature and cell, I might have the ability to now trap creatures, or to cause rain clouds to repopulate fruit, or go to other tribes and maybe do fireworks to impress them. So these are like little things that help you down particular paths that you've earned. The other major component of Spore is you're creating everything along the way. We have these very easy-to-use editors, so the player, in some sense, ends up creating an entire world as they play the game. The creature editor is one of about 8 editors in the game that the player is kind of interacting with. We released a version of it free on the web, so anybody can go download it from spore.com and play with it and get a sense of what it's like. And just in a couple days, we have almost 500,000 creatures already uploaded that players have created. It's an amazingly easy-to-use tool. We're doing most of the content in the game procedurally, which is that players can create the stuff or the computer can create it. The one thing that we didn't have, though, was procedural music. And this is something that Brian Eno had actually been working on for many years. He came into the project, started working with our audio engineers, and we ended up with about half the music in the game is procedural music that Brian Eno engineered, that basically is unique for the cities, the creatures, etc. I think, there are a lot of things you can learn from games at different levels. I think a lot of people, if you ask them, are they creative or could they create a creature, they would say no. But you hand them the right tools and prove them otherwise, and they think of themselves a little bit differently. Likewise, you give somebody a complex system and make it into a game, and all of a sudden, the joy, the challenge of the game is deciphering that complex system and understanding it. And now you have kids learning the scientific method, through experimentation. They're looking at data, forming hypotheses in their mind, and building a more accurate model. So in that sense, I think, games, especially games that involve complex systems, are definitely teaching kids the scientific method, if nothing else, how to approach a complex system and decipher it. Everybody can be creative. And in fact, they can have the ability to create fully realized worlds. And when people make these things, it's funny how they inherently then want to write the backstory and describe why this thing is like that. And they become story writers, after they become a modeler. And so these things kind of cascade, where once you unlock one aspect of creativity, then the rest come a lot more easily. Out of Spore, I would ultimately like players to, at first just have a better perspective on, the complete history and future of life, stepping way back, almost, like sitting under the summer sky looking up at the stars, wondering where life might be going. Are there other, creatures out there asking themselves the same questions?